Hello again, everyone. Back again, and more DC shit to talk about. Few months ago, I put out a video talking about DC's next biggest crossover event, Dark Crisis. It's currently out right now. You can go to your comic book store and buy it and read it. Um, this is the first big crossover event that DC has done since Dark Knight's Death Metal, and it seems to be attempting to do almost the exact same thing that Dark Knight's Death Metal was meant to do, and that is to fix continuity problems. And I can't think of the right word that I want to use, but just take the entire story of DC Comics and smooth it out. Like, it has all these rough edges and these discrepancies and conflicting things. I'm not talking about standalone stories, black label stuff, um, stuff that is clearly not part of this. Batman, Last Night on Earth, White Knight. What else is there? There's been plenty of stories that have been published in the last decade that do not touch the mainstream DC multiverse comics story. But the ones that have been a part of it have just been all kinds of jumbled up, and Dark Knight's Death Metal back in 2020 was meant to fix it. It did not. It did not have the effect that I think a lot of the fans wanted it to have. And yeah, so I saw Dark Crisis as them. It was, once again, they were going to try and do a big crossover event that was meant to have like a huge impact on the DC Comics story, the overall continuity and story of DC Comics. It was meant to kind of smooth everything out and make it followable and understandable and get rid of continuity errors. The problem is, though, is that me personally, I think that there's really only two ways to do that. Option number one is the easier of the two options, and that is to just do a big event that basically obliterates the DC multiverse comic story and restarts it from absolutely 100% square one. That's the easiest way to go. Bruce Wayne is 25. He's just started being Batman. We're going to do another Batman origin story. There are no Robins. He's never met Dick Grayson. Superman is freshly landed on Earth. Hal Jordan is the very first human Green Lantern ever. I'm talking take it all back to absolute square one. That's the easiest way to solve the continuity problems, is to just erase all continuity and start fresh for a new generation. I'm honestly okay with that idea. I would have been. So, because I'm a DC fan, and as long as the continuity is solid, and there's not a bunch of discrepancies, and there's not a bunch of artists and writers at DC bickering over with each other and fighting over like whose stuff is going to be canon and whose stuff is not, as long as the story flows smoothly, I'm in. I don't want drastic changes. Like, I don't want Batman to be turned into a woman. I don't want Superman to just arbitrarily have a boyfriend just because that's the thing to do now, to virtue signal to the world that, oh, look, as a company we're all progressive and shit. No, you're not. You're just doing it to get the praise. That's all. That's the only reason you're doing it, for the shock value that may generate sales, and you're doing it just to virtue signal and get people to give you a nice pat on the back, be like, oh wow, good for you, look how progressive you are. It's the only reason you're doing it, doing shit like that. So yeah, that would be the first. That's the first of the two ways I'm going to talk about, and it's the easiest way. The second way is for some really diehard DC Comics employees and fans. They have to fit both of those categories, to just kind of take some time and just seriously, as long as it takes, go through all of DC Comics continuity from the Crisis on Infinite Earths reboot of 1986 till now, and just start with the Crisis on Infinite Earths and go from there. And if you find a continuity error, throw it out. Keep going, find a continuity, throw it out. And then when it's all said and done, give us a list, a reading list, like, hey, this is every single DC comic book story that is canon, and here it is presented to you in chronological reading order as best we can. Like, I get it, there are some stories that are supposed to take place at the same time, like simultaneously. Like, sometimes Hal Jordan is off in space doing some Green Lantern shit, and while he's doing that, Bruce Wayne is in Gotham City. So there's some stories that are going to take place at the same time, but you get what I'm saying. You could still put together a pretty cohesive list that people could follow. That's the more difficult option of figuring out these continuity errors and smoothing things out. So, why am I bringing this up? The reason I'm bringing this up is because it looks like that's exactly what's about to happen. Friday, during San Diego Comic-Con, during the DC Comics panel, they revealed that this Dark Crisis event, they've been straight up just lying. Not that like it's a bad thing, like they're lying to preserve a surprise, even though it's really not that all that surprising. They're like we never revealed the real title. We told you that this big event was called Dark Crisis. It's not. The real full title is Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it is directly meant to be a sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And yes, it's gonna have big multiverse reshuffling implications and consequences for the DC multiverse comic story. So I have the trailer ready to go, their little announcement trailer that came out from Comic-Con, and we're going to take a second and watch it here.
There's a major moment that happens in Dark Crisis number 4 where the Infinite Earths return. And so with that change, the actual title of the book is going to be changing. So this is something we've been keeping secret from the very beginning of this book. The book is actually called Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths.
When I know this was going to happen, it was like, whoa, really, are we gonna do this?
Crisis on Infinite Earths is one of my favorite stories of all time. Being able to do a sequel to that story, to be able to do something that is able to carry forward that story with Pariah and the Infinite Earths has just been really awesome.
I am also a huge fan of the George Perez Titans and Mark Wolfman's. I still can't believe it. It's a huge honor.
Once you get past issue 4, it gets super nuts every single issue.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of epic.
We have huge fights between villains versus villains.
Big action, big epicness you expect from a crisis. It's coming.
And we're really excited for you to see where we're taking the rest of the series. The ending to this series is so massive. It'll have a major impact on the DCU moving forward.
So yeah, you saw there in that little announcement trailer that the writer, I don't even know his name, and it was just on the screen. The guy sitting in the room with all the comics and toys behind him. He said that like in issue 4, something big happens. The Infinite Earths return. Weren't they back already? Wasn't that the result of Doomsday Clock? Wasn't that the result of Dark Knight's Death Metal? Wasn't that the result of Dark Knight's Metal? Weren't we already back to a DC multiverse? Hell, weren't we already at a DC Omniverse? Didn't we already say in Dark Knight's Metal and Death Metal that not only were there infinite Earths, there's infinite multiverses? What do you mean they just came back in issue 4 of Dark Crisis? What do you mean? So, yeah, it's another one of those stories where they're just trying to smooth out the continuity. That's what they're trying to do, and they're like, please don't ask too many questions about how we're gonna do it. Just accept the fact that we're gonna do it. Now, here's my thing: if they can pull it off, great. I'm all for it. Because I want the continuity smoothed out. I want it to make sense again. But it's a matter of whether or not they can. And I have not been keeping up with Dark Crisis. I have not been reading it. I'm determined to wait till it is all out, and then I'm going to spoil the fuck out of it for myself by reading all of the plot spoilers online. because I'm not going to waste my money if it's trash. That's just the way it is for me. Now, something like that, like we mentioned, the Infinite Earths returning in issue 4 of Dark Crisis, even though it's in several of the past major crossover events, it's already been like they returned. So I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Shit like that, like I said, I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to go along with it. If at the end of this whole thing, they can actually pull off rebooting the DC Multiverse comic story and smoothing out the continuity errors and making it cohesive and make sense. If they can manage that, then I'm all in. And what that means, what they have to do is, regardless of what happens in this Dark Crisis story, this Dark Crisis on Infinite Earth story, regardless of what happens in it, moving forward after that, they have to never reference previous shit again. Never, ever, never, ever, 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 never, ever, 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 never, ever. Because the previous stuff is where all the continuity errors lie. So, never, ever. At the very least, I'll put it this way. At the very least, everything from Flashpoint, up like back to and including Flashpoint, all the way to Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, has to be just obliterated, removed, all of it. That's a bare minimum, and that kind of sucks because I know a lot of people like the Flashpoint storyline, and they like some of the characters that it introduced. They liked Flashpoint Batman and stuff like that. Sorry. A lot of stuff that there was some stuff that came out of New 52 that people liked, like the Batman run, Scott Snyder's Batman run, the Court of Owls. That stuff was really well received. Too bad. It's got to go. If we want it to make sense, it's got to go. Bye bye. The end. At the very least, everything from now all the way back to and including Flashpoint has to just be obliterated and erased from continuity. From 1986, Crisis on Infinite Earths, all the way up till Flashpoint, it was one cohesive narrative story. That there's a lot of it. There's a lot of content there. There's a lot of story arcs, a lot of comics. So it would take someone with a lot of free time to put that all in order of how to read it. But it could be done, and I'm pretty sure it has been done. You can probably Google it and look it up. DC Comics proper reading order, chronological reading order, and from Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1986 all the way up till Flashpoint, you can read it in the right order and have it make sense. So yeah, the continuity error started when they first tried to do a really big, hard back to square one reboot with the New 52, but then they did not commit to it. I've said that many times on this channel. Their initial plan was hard reboot, back to square one, erase all continuity, and then they did not do that. They did not stick with it. They started to mention things that happened before but were not supposed to have happened before, and it all got fucked up. So yeah, we could like I said, we could go either way with this, but there's only two options, and that's completely obliterate all previous continuity and lore, start back at absolute square one. That's the easiest way. Or do a deep dive into DC Comics lore all the way from Crisis on Infinite Earths to Flashpoint, not including Flashpoint. Take all of that lore, take out all continuity errors if there are any, compile a reading order list, and present it to your public, to your fans, to your consumers. Hey, this is the proper order. This is what you should buy. Read this, then read this, then read this, then read this. That's the harder thing to do, but it could be done. Now, it just so happens recently, I was preparing a video to do, and the video is going to be all about what I would do with DC Comics if I was in charge of rebooting it back to square one. And since it looks like there's a chance that might be happening anyway in the near future, I'm going to go ahead and share that with you guys right now. So my plan was going to be this. If we're taking things all the way back to square one with the DC Multiverse comic book story, I was going to immediately say we're going to we're going to avoid certain things right off the bat. And the things we're going to avoid are the Justice League. We're not going to be in a hurry to build the Justice League. I know that's like a staple of the DC Comics world and whatnot, but no, we're going to forgo that for the time being. We're not going to rush into that. If we will get there when we get there. Superman, I think we all just have to accept has run his course, for lack of a better way to put it. Like, time and time again, people try to make Superman mean something again, and it just never seems to quite land. Like, there will always be people who love Superman. He's the world's most enduring superhero. He's the first superhero. But there's just something about the character that people don't relate to, they don't identify with. And I honestly think what it comes down to is, in this day and age that we live in, it's sad to say, but when we see a character like Superman who has the amount of power that he has, and yet he is still 100% good, we just don't like that. We don't buy it. In the past, people saw Superman being a champion for good with all that power, and they took it as an inspiration. Nowadays, we just see it as bullshit. Unfortunately, I think that's the way it is. So we're going to kind of avoid Superman for a while. Not saying we're never going to get to him, but he's not going to be a priority, just like the Justice League, and we will get to Superman when we get to Superman. Also going to avoid the multiverse. We're not going to talk about the multiverse. We're not going to dive into that. We're going to focus on one universe and one narrative, overarching narrative in that one universe. That's going to be the priority, or it would be if I had the power to do this. And then I would also avoid big crossover events for a while at the beginning, for a long while. My focus would not be on trying to do a big summer crossover event every year. It would be on just trying to tell good stories in our monthly titles. And yes, there can be crossovers. I'm talking about just avoiding big crossover events. So we're not gonna be able to reboot DC without Batman. Batman's gonna happen. If I had my choice, I would pick Lee Bermejo as the artist. I love Lee Bermejo's design, specifically this one. I do not really like his design for Batman, where the chest emblem is part of the cape and cowl. I like it much more when the chest emblem is just on the chest of the bodysuit. This is perfect. This is a perfect Batman. I absolutely love it. Black, gray, utility belt that looks like it holds gear, looks armored, looks protective, but it still has that comic book feel. No underwear. So yeah, and he's going to be your typical Batman. He's going to have he's going to be smart. He's going to have the billions of dollars. He's going to, due to his money and his company, he's going to have all the cutting edge technology and gear, because that's what allows him to hold up against people with actual superpowers. He has trained his body and his mind to perfection, and he has crazy cutting edge technology and gear. That's his shtick. So he's going to have all that. But I would keep him very grounded to Gotham City and what goes on in Gotham City, and I would only have him get involved with anything outside of Gotham City if a story was done where the stakes were so high that it was truly necessary for him to get involved, or if an ally or a friend that he held dear, if they asked him for help, then he would get involved. But he's not joining any teams. He's not building a satellite in space. He can stand among more powerful superheroes and meta-human characters, but his priority is Gotham, the war on crime in Gotham. So he's going to stay in Gotham City as much as possible. And yeah, he's not going to be shitty Batman trying to figure shit out. He's going to be billionaire, expert fighter, technical genius. He's going to be a mechanic, computer engineer, a ninja. He'd be all of that. Definitely going to have the Batcave. And the Batcave cannot be shitty. It cannot be like just something he slapped together. It needs to be some high-tech badass stuff. This is a good example of the Batcave. It needs to have his armory where he keeps all his gadgets and gear. It needs to have the Bat computer. It needs to have a place to store the Batmobile. It needs to have a gym. It needs to have a crime lab. It needs to have all this stuff. So it cannot be something simple. It has to be very extravagant and very cutting edge. And in recent times, they've kind of changed it up to where, like, in a lot of stories, he no longer does the whole lives in the mansion and has his lair is in the caves beneath the mansion. They've done a lot of this now. I've seen it done at least twice between movies and comics, where he lives in a penthouse on top of Wayne Tower, and the Batcave is built into a subway station, an abandoned subway station beneath Wayne Tower. It's been abandoned. It's been forgotten about. I'm okay with this idea. I'm open to it, as long as it contains everything that I just mentioned: gym, crime lab, armory, bat computer, Batmobile, all that stuff. It has to have all that stuff. So the Batmobile, it needs to be cutting edge. It needs to be like no other car out there. It needs to be fast. It needs to be armored. It needs to be protective. It does not need to have a huge offensive capability. It doesn't need machine guns. It doesn't need cannons. It just needs to be armored, fast, and cutting edge. Personally, my favorite is the Arkham Knight Batmobile, which is what you see here. And this is its normal version. I'm not talking about its transformed version when you turn it into like offensive mode and a cannon comes out the top of it. No, just like this. This is a perfect Batmobile for me. This is like basically what I would shoot for. And then the Batwing, most likely going to have to be something like what we see in The Dark Knight Rises. A lot of people would prefer a more like traditional jet airplane looking Batwing, but the thing about that is, I don't know how many people really know this, but planes cannot hover in midair. Most, like the overwhelmingly vast majority of planes cannot hover in midair. But helicopters, helocraft, they can hover. And it's going to need to be able to hover. It's going to need to be able to move fast, fly between like streets and buildings. It's going to need to be able to hover. So something more along the lines of what he had in The Dark Knight Rises is what we would be shooting for with the Batwing. And then as time progresses, we will introduce and expand upon Batman's like character roster and his universe within Gotham City. We will introduce like Dick Grayson. We would introduce Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, Jason Todd, Red Hood, all the rest. It's just we'd take our time doing it. Next character that definitely needs another shot at the prime time would be Green Lantern. Ever since that horrible Ryan Reynolds movie, he's just become kind of a joke, and I feel like that's unfair. I would definitely take Green Lantern and make him kind of like I would replace Superman with Green Lantern at the forefront of the DC universe. So Hal Jordan, because he's the first human one, and we're starting back at the very beginning. So Hal Jordan, it would be space-based adventures. He is a space superhero. He's not meant. He has an entire space sector to patrol. He is not just. I know he's from Earth, but he's not a hero of Earth. He's a hero for this entire sector of space. So he would spend minimal time on Earth, and the kind of stories we would tell is basically crosses between like space operas and police dramas. And then I also think that the mask that Hal Jordan wears is a little outdated. I would kind of insist that they lose that mask and instead do something a little more like a helmet. Here we have Judge Dredd from the Dredd movie. He's kind of a superhero, police, law enforcement kind of character, and he wears this helmet, so something maybe like that. And then over here we have Valiant Comics Exo Man of War. He's another very like spacefaring hero, and he wears a helmet like this. So I would almost want to try giving Green Lantern a helmet, rather than just like some weird like this. It's just a little mask that goes over his eyes. Like, what the hell is that for? You know? And then story-wise, I really like what they did with Green Lantern Earth 1. The Green Lantern Corps it was a big thing in the past, but it's kind of in shambles. And Hal Jordan, getting the ring, getting the lantern, he's the one that kind of, his arrival and him becoming a Green Lantern is kind of the thing that sparks a resurgence in the Green Lantern Corps. Green Lanterns, they've been driven to the brink of extinction. A lot of them are in hiding, but him becoming a Green Lantern kind of brings a lot of them out of hiding, and he kind of revives their presence in the galaxy. This is a neat take on it because I just like the fact that there was no centralized power hierarchy or administration. Like they don't really report to the Guardians. They're kind of just figuring things out on their own. It was interesting. I like these stories. I would maybe try to shoot for something similar. So, to touch on the supernatural side of stuff, I would focus on Hellblazer, specifically John Constantine. He is Hellblazer. He would be the supernatural hero for my restarted DC Comics universe. He'd be going up against stuff like demons, wraiths, other supernatural threats. He has a very tortured past and a doomed future. So yeah, I would definitely have one of our core titles of the relaunch, the reboot, be Hellblazer featuring John Constantine. And then just like with Batman, over time we would build upon Constantine's universe and we'd introduce other characters of the supernatural side of DC, like Zatanna, Deadman, Etrigan, and we'd slowly start to build that universe up. And then Deathstroke. I think he's a very underrated character, and I don't think he's ever been given the opportunity to really shine. I would have Deathstroke be one of the core monthly series of our reboot. He would be a military spy type character. He is a super soldier that was experimented on by the government. He has a healing factor, kind of like Wolverine. Another guy with a dark past. He's been used a lot. He's very untrusting. He's not a good guy, but he's not a complete bad guy either. I would have his stories revolve around the DC Universe's version of like the different intelligence agencies like Argus and maybe some stuff with Project Cadmus. And then also I could see a crossover between him and Batman occurring. And then slowly we would build up his universe as well, introduce other DC spy, military, assassin-y type characters like Deadshot, Bloodsport, Grifter, Peacemaker, and Rick Flag. The next of my core titles for my reboot would be Titans, not Teen Titans, just Titans. And one of the things that I would wanted to very much so make sure about was that this team and these characters, they are their own thing. They're not Junior Justice League, they are their own thing. If you notice here in the roster of characters I have on the screen, there's no Robin, there's no Kid Flash, there's no Red Arrow, there's no Miss Martian, there's no Superboy, none of that shit. It's characters, it's the characters. Like Beast Boy, Cyborg, Starfire, Raven, they're not the junior version of any other adult DC superhero. They are their own character. So that's the kind of Titans I would go for. I would go for storylines of like they were an experiment. It could be Argus, Star Labs, Project Cadmus, but they're an experiment and they escape. They have no real parents or guardians. Their very existence is part of a government metahuman conspiracy. Someone or some entity, some force out there is trying to build their own metahuman army, and I could see them crossing over with a lot of the other titles. They could cross over with Deathstroke because Jericho here is Slade's son. We could do crossovers with Hellblazer because Raven has supernatural elements, and they could cross over with Batman, and that's how Robin, Dick Grayson could eventually meet them, but that's way down the line. Not going to try to rush into that at all. Alright, so the next monthly series that I would do is Blue and Gold, and it would be kind of like a superhero buddy cop stories featuring Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, and it would deal with them having to work together, but they're also at odds because they have the like complete opposite motivations for wanting to be superheroes. Blue Beetle wants to honor the legacy of his mentor, and whereas Booster Gold is a washed up football athlete from the future who feels that his shot at fame and fortune was denied him, and so he time travels back into the past and uses advanced future technology that he brings with him to be a superhero, and he's doing this just to be famous and rich and kind of regain that fame and fortune life that he feels he was deprived. I would have the series be, very comedic, buddy cop comedy type stuff, but also have very heartfelt moments. And I would also have them do some time travel adventures where they, go into the future, back to Booster Gold's, the time where he's from, or maybe even further into the future. And then Batman Beyond. I would do Batman Beyond running as a monthly series simultaneously with the others. We know the drill with Batman Beyond. It's Batman in a futuristic cyberpunk setting, and I would have him and his stories cross over with Blue and Gold when Booster Gold and Blue Beetle time travel into the future and they meet Batman Beyond. I would have that happen. Next up, the New Gods. I wouldn't change a whole lot about the New Gods and their mythology and their story. I would have it kind of be like a Greek mythology epic, but in space. And I would want it to pay heavy homage to Jack Kirby's work. And seeing as this is like a cosmic space story, we could also see this crossover with Green Lantern. So that is basically it. That is what I would do if I had the power to make those kind of decisions at DC Comics, but I don't. But someone does, and it looks like we very well might see a complete reboot. We might see that. I mean, that was essentially the result of the first Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was the multiverse, goodbye, gone, doesn't exist anymore. And all of the different realities of the multiverse have been meshed together to create just one streamlined universe, one cohesive narrative, one universe, one world, one setting that we're going to tell stories in. That was the result of Crisis on Infinite Earths back in 1986, and now it's revealed that we have Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. So who's to say something like that is not going to happen again? They said at the beginning of Dark Crisis, when it was first announced, that this is not going to be some giant reboot story, but it's fucking called Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. We all know what that means. So my interest is up a little bit. Like when it was just Dark Crisis, I was like, the fuck out of here. But it's Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, so I'm a little bit more interested. I'm still not interested enough to read it, but I am interested enough to where now I'm like, I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what the repercussions are once it's all over. And I will be on like the day after the final issue goes on for sale, I will be getting online and checking all the spoilers and seeing what the result is. So yeah, that's my take on that. Let me know what you guys think about this change in title, this big reveal that it's actually Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Leave some comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. Get a discussion started. If you like this video, please hit that like button. It really helps out my channel. If you want to help out the channel even farther, check out some of my other videos and subscribe. Other than that, though, I will talk to you guys next time.